Hello and welcome to Cycles of Time, your weekly guide to what's happening on Earth as we make our revolutionary journey around the sun. For time immemorial, our human ancestors have created myths and meanings to help us adapt and thrive as seasons change. Join me each week to explore the intersections of these ancient cycles, from the indigenous medicine wheel to the pagan wheel of the year, the Babylonian and Greek zodiac to the I Ching, the ancient Chinese book of changes. I'm your host, Allison Dale, and this is the Cycles of Time podcast. Hey everyone! Thanks for joining me today on this pilot episode of the Cycles of Time podcast. I'm so excited to begin this project. It's been incubating as a seed in my brain for many years as I've dived deeper and deeper into kind of a multidimensional, multicultural study of this beautiful planet Earth and her many seasons. This first episode of the podcast will give you an introduction to the who, what, and why behind what's going on here. And the second episode will be the first of the weekly horoscopes, where I'll give you information and guidance on our current place within the wheel of the year from a cross-cultural perspective. I'm intentionally beginning this podcast on the spring equinox here in the Northern Hemisphere, which is the time when I personally celebrate the new year. Celebrating on January 1st with popping a bottle of champagne and the Times Square ball drop was fun, in high school, but it's never made much sense to me in my body. I feel like it's kind of weird to begin a new year in the dead cold of winter when all I really want to do is cozy up by the fire or take a nap. So spring to me feels like the new year, and in many cultures throughout the world, this has also been celebrated as the new year. Spring equinox happens on March 20th or 21st each year, and it's the moment in the year that's halfway between the summer and the winter solstice, when the day and the night are equal length. Equinox is like equal night, equal day and night. So it's, when the sun is crossing the celestial equator going north, and we have equal dark and light. In the tropical or the western zodiac, the spring equinox signifies the beginning of Aries season, which is also the beginning of the astrological new year. And Aries is symbolized by a glyph that looks like ram horns bursting into a new season. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Aries glyph. But to me, the more I looked at it, the more I also think it looks like a dicot sprout coming out of the earth, a symbol of spring in that way too. And so after a very slow and inward winter, I definitely am feeling spring in the air right now and in my body. So it feels time to start something new. I'm starting this podcast because I've fallen in love with tracking ancient human stories along with the turning of the earth. I feel like this process connects me deeply to both space and time, to the ancestors that have come before me, and also the environments that I live within. I also am starting it because for the vast majority of human history, all of our calendars were cyclical and were based on seasons and planetary cycles. The calendar that we're using today, the Gregorian calendar, began based on the will of powerful men and kind of pragmatics for tax collection, and it divided time up outside of the natural cycles. And the older I get, the less the Gregorian calendar makes really any sense to me. I still use it, of course, to be able to communicate with other people for daily scheduling. And, to do this podcast, it'll be in 52 weeks of the Gregorian calendar. But the cycles of time have been broken up in many different ways throughout history and prehistory. And as far as I'm concerned, holidays and ceremonies and ritual, I'm tapping back into those natural cycles of the earth and the sun and the moon a lot more. Over the past year, I've been writing a blog on Substack every new and full moon. And this is a project called Astrosomatics that is really helped me build a deep relationship with the signs of the zodiac and the seasons and a lot of these ancient mythological stories that are tied into astrology. It's really been such an enriching project for my life and so much fun to see how the cycles of the moon and the placement among the stars relates to what's happening in my personal life and also in the collective throughout the year. So it's really been an embodied process of understanding the cycles of the moon and the sun as they make their dance around us in the sky. So it's been super fun. And if you'd like to take a look at that, you can read it and subscribe to it at astrosomatics.substack.com. That's also where I'll be sending out transcripts and recordings of this podcast going forward. So if you'd like to receive them in your inbox, go ahead and sign up there. I'll post this in the show notes as well. As I've been writing Astrosomatics, I also started studying the medicine wheel, practicing Qigong, and learning more about human design in the I Ching, getting into some studies of those systems. And all of these ancient circular systems hold so much beauty, I feel, and so much wisdom, and also so many interconnections. So I decided to start this podcast as a way to continue and deepen my learnings as I talk about them. So I'm kind of along for the ride with you all and look forward to learning from people out there who are listening as well. I'll give you some examples now, I guess, of what I mean by the cycles of time in a little bit greater detail. I'm working with several different cultures, several different ancient systems, and so I'll just kind of give you a download on what those mean for me. Throughout human history, different people have divided up the great wheel of the year in many different ways, as I've said. So many of these practices and philosophies I see are emerging again today after they've been pushed down and discredited by the powers that be. To me, it feels like there's really a renaissance of ancient wisdom coming to the surface in today's culture as we crave more of a connection to other people in deeper ways, and also to our environments and to our ancestors as well. So I feel like we're, collectively awakening to the universal truths of our place within the larger universe. And we're zooming out a bit from the stories we've been fed under colonialism and under the predominant kind of modern patriarchal culture. And it's a beautiful thing to see so many witches and so many astrologers and so many people who are really paying reverence to these cyclical systems. So I see you out there. I recently have met, in the past several years, have met many people that are paying reverence to these cycles in their daily lives. I know a lot of people who celebrate the solstice and the equinoxes and live more seasonally rather than purely by the Gregorian calendar. A lot of people are tapping into the holidays that their European ancestors celebrated, for example, such as Beltane, which is May Day, Samhain, which is also known as Halloween, and Yule, which is kind of around the same time as Christmas. So these are probably some that you may have heard of, but there's others as well in this kind of neo-pagan wheel of the year. So that's an example of a cycle of time. I've also met many people, especially here in the Southwest where I live, who are learning from the wisdom of the medicine wheel, which is it's a unified synthesis of the 4 directions, the 4 seasons, and the 4 stages of life. And it was created kind of independently by people indigenous to North America and Europe and Siberia. Embodies the 4 directions, as well as Father Sky, Mother Earth, and Spirit Tree. And all of those are symbolizing dimensions of a healthy and vibrant life. I grew up in New Mexico and live here again now. And for those of you who have connections to New Mexico, you'll know that the state flag is the Zia symbol. Zia symbol is a very, very popular symbol from the Zia Pueblo, the Zia culture here. And it's another incredible symbol that resembles the sun and represents a similar thing to the medicine wheel. It's a circle with 4 lines emanating out from each side. And those represent the 4 cardinal directions, the 4 seasons, the 4 stages of life. And in Zia culture, it's the 4 sacred obligations that someone must develop in their lives, which are a strong body, a clear mind, a pure spirit, and a devotion to the welfare of others. And I think that's so beautiful, and I'm so grateful to have been able to appreciate this symbol throughout my life. The medicine wheel and the Zia symbol are also examples of cycles of time. In my personal life lately, I have been studying Qigong, the Chinese energy art, ancient Chinese energy art, with a couple of really wonderful local teachers. And through them, I've learned a lot about the ancient Taoist Wuxing cycle, which is a 5-stage mythology of the seasons and the life cycle, again, through the elements of wood, fire, earth, metal, and water. This cycle, the Wuxing, shows the ever-changing, interconnected nature of everything on Earth, from the basic elements to the seasons to the cycles of life. And it is also a cycle of time that we'll be working with here. Another one is the 13 moon cycle, the 13 moons of the year. And we all know about the harvest moon. And I think it's becoming a lot more common for full moons to be talked about in popular culture by their indigenous names, like the wolf moon, the snow moon, the worm moon. These are all generalized names that have been popularized by the Farmer's Almanac and other resources. But in reality, there are hundreds or thousands of indigenous names for each of the 13 full moons of the year, and they vary by language and geographical region, and they relate to the habits of the animals and plants, the flora and fauna during that season. And looking at the 13 moons is also a cycle of time. Finally, the last system that I'll talk about a little bit here in this brief introduction is relating to the systems of human design, the gene keys, and the I Ching, the ancient Chinese book of changes. So I have recently become really deeply immersed in study of human design and the gene keys. They're relatively new methodologies for those of you who don't know much about these. They kind of were channeled by various people in the 1980s, and so it's a newer system, but they're basically fusions of astrology, the I Ching, the Hindu Brahmin chakra system, and quantum physics. And when I first heard that, I was kind of like, oh, cool, that sounds really great that someone would put these all together. So cool. But I was also quite skeptical about it. But as I've dug deeper into this system, I've found that it really does benefit my life in practice. And I think that's truly due to the fact that they're really based on the I Ching and the Book of Changes, which was a system I was less familiar with, and I think a lot of people in the Western world were less familiar with. So I'm super intrigued by how these systems have unveiled a lot of the wisdoms from the I Ching. The I Ching is one of the oldest recorded divination systems in the world, and it dates back to possibly around 6,000 BC. There's not a definite date because it evolved over time, but many, many thousands of years ago. And the book is composed of 64 chapters, which are called hexagrams, these combinations of broken or solid lines. You've probably seen these out there before, but these hexagrams are symbolic contemplations about living in harmony with the earth and all her beings, including our human neighbors. And it's a really beautiful series of kind of esoteric investigations into human nature and the nature of life. In Human Design and the Gene Keys, the Fuxi sequence of the I Ching, which is a certain ordering of these hexagrams or chapters, which dates back to around 3000 BC. This sequence has been transposed onto the wheel of the year, kind of around the zodiac, so that about 1 and sometimes 2 hexagrams or gates corresponds with one of the 52 Gregorian weeks. And so the I Ching is also a way of seeing the cycle of time. And we'll be diving into that here on this podcast each week. There'll be about one hexagram, one contemplation per week. And again, sometimes 2. So, what's next? All of these cycles have been revealed to me just kind of organically over the past several years. And as they've been revealed to me, I'm an artist, and so my visual brain couldn't help but make a mandala of the kind of an overlay of all of these systems in my mind's eye. And I think about it like there's the 4 points on the medicine wheel, the 4 directions, the 5 elements of the Wuxing Taoist cycle, the 8 holy days of the pagan wheel of the year, which are the solstices and equinoxes, and then cross-quarter days, which happen halfway between each of the equinoxes and solstices. 12 signs of the zodiac, which we all know, the 13 moons of the year from indigenous perspectives, and these 64 hexagrams or gates of the I Ching, which all of these different ways of breaking down time are superimposed around a circle. And I've just loved visually how that comes together, which really inspired this podcast. So the circle, of course, when we look at astronomy or physics, the circle is the path of the Earth around the sun each year. And each of these ancient systems is a breakdown of that circle of the Earth around the sun into meaningful parts. So you probably would love to see a visual aid here. It's pretty clutch. So I do have one. It's a work in progress. I want to make it prettier, but it is available on my website at cyclesoftimepodcast.com. I'll link that in the show notes. But I think it would be helpful to pause the podcast now and take a look at this visually if you're a visual learner like I am, to really see how each of these beautiful systems, beautiful cycles of times interrelates with each other. I do want to mention that, of course, there are many more ways of breaking down the cycles of time. There's infinite ways, really, but over the course of this podcast, I'll be focusing on these really dominant and complex and very old systems that we've all maybe heard of to some degree or another. So, I love synthesis. I love putting things together. It's one of my favorite things to do and just how my brain works. So I'm really excited about doing it here. I also want to mention, just as a side note, that I will be coming from a Northern Hemisphere perspective, and I know that can get a little bit like, well, what about the Southern Hemisphere? Or what about the equator? And obviously, they're experiencing cycles of time as well, but the majority of these systems I just mentioned were born out of the Northern Hemisphere, and I'm really curious about studying cycles from an equatorial and Southern Hemisphere perspective in the future. But for now, we'll focus on the North, and because that's where I'm at this moment in time as well. Cycle of time. It's an infinite circle. It's a spiral, really. The cycle of the Earth around the sun. If you've seen lately, I've seen a lot more diagrams floating around with on the internet of just the amazing spirals that are happening as the planets circle around the sun and also go through space so quickly. And so it's really like, in elementary school, you think of it as just these kind of static circles around the sun, but in reality, it's these spiraling, beautiful movements of kind of Fibonacci sequence of cycles going through space as the planets circle around the sun and as the sun circles around the galactic center. And it's super fun to see these visually. So I'll definitely be posting links to those when I find them, because I think that it just really helps to tap into that. So yeah, I just think that by learning about these through these various lenses and mythological breakdowns, cultural breakdowns, our relationship with Mother Earth, with our local environments, with our neighbors, and with our ancestors, and with ourselves can really deepen and blossom. So thank you for being here. I hope this fulfills a little bit of that. So now that I've talked to you a little bit about what the cycles of time mean to me, I'll let you know a little bit about myself and my deeper why for starting this podcast from a personal level. I'm Allison, and I'm an artist, a writer, an entrepreneur, a somatic breathwork guide, and a consulting astrologer. I've been studying and practicing astrology for over a decade, and I love astrology because it's a body of knowledge that dates back, 4,000 years to ancient Mesopotamia and traces its history through Egypt and Greece and Rome and into its modern day Renaissance. Like I mentioned before, I really do feel that there's a Renaissance in these cyclic arts and cyclic understandings. And I think it's so cool to see how many people are interested in deepening their relationship with the planets and stars and these beautiful mythologies, Greek, Roman, and before that, definitely into the Middle East and Africa where they originated. And just there's a huge interest. I see it around me every day, and I'm stoked that that's happening. I think astrology is beautiful because it ties our place among the other planets and within the galaxy to the stories and the history of our ancestors. And the more I've learned about the myths and symbols of the specific languages of astrology, the more interested I've really become. It's not even an interest in my brain, but like an embodied interest I've had in living in harmony with the seasons of the earth and with the changes as they happen. I've been a lot more accepting of change as it's come up ultimately. And I've also become just more and more interested in other stories of the cycles of time from around the globe. Astrology was kind of the beginning, and then it's turned into just this deep investigation and deep curiosity for these cycles of time from everywhere. And so my kind of life story, a little short one. I've lived most of my adult life in big cities, where I've thrown big art shows and started businesses and worked and met a ton of incredible people. But in early 2020, I moved back to the land I grew up in, which is currently known as Santa Fe, New Mexico. It's the traditional home of the Tewa and the Tanos people, the Dene and the Anasazi, among others. And as a kid, I spent a lot of time outside, a lot of time under the big, vast, starry dome of sky that's here. A lot of time playing with the earth and making forts in the dirt. So I was definitely a nature kid. And I also grew up visiting a lot of the pueblos that were built by the traditional and indigenous people to this region. And most of the pueblos here are centered around a kiva, which is a round ceremonial building that's used for both ritual and for monitoring cycles of the cosmos. And so from an early age, just being outside amongst the stars and amongst the changing seasons and around these buildings, these kivas and pueblos, I just really got the idea early on that a circle was the way that time worked, not a straight line. And also, there's a lack of air pollution and a lack of light pollution and high altitude here. So it gave me just, such amazing access to the night sky. Some of my best memories growing up were laying out on my trampoline or up on my flat rooftop with friends in sleeping bags in the summer and just staring at the meteor showers that were happening, like the Perseids in every August, and naming the constellations and just really connecting with the sky in that way. So I left home. I left New Mexico after high school for New Orleans, and then after that I lived in China and Brazil for some stints, and then kind of settled in the San Francisco Bay Area for a decade up until 2020. And while I was there in majority of big cities, I missed the constellations and the planets, kind of like I missed my cats and dogs and my friends. It's definitely a meaningful connection to me that took going away to get back in touch with. So after years of, hard work and hustle and fun in these urban environments, I had a baby. And I decided to move back to New Mexico to be near my family. I named my daughter Tala, which means star in Tagalog, the Philippines language. And Tala is the goddess of the morning and the evening star, which is, as we know, Venus, in the ancient Philippines, where her father's ancestors are from. I didn't really realize how much of a reunion I'd have with the night sky when I came home to the desert. But when I saw my little 1-year-old star girl notice the phases of the moon, look up at the moon, one of her first words was dipper, because we'd get out of the car in the evening getting home and she would look up and see the Big Dipper. And it really made my heart explode. And she kind of showed me the truth. Just, 1-year-olds looking through their eyes is just such an amazing experience. And kind of coming back to a land and a sky that I knew really well, but seeing it through that perspective of a baby's eyes was so cool. And she really showed me the truth of our inherent connection to the cosmos above. By that point, I'd studied astrology for a few years already, kind of as a hobby. But as the pandemic lockdown happened and was just, such a real thing, in addition to having an infant to raise, I had more time to kind of immerse myself in the natural world again, as well as in kind of got obsessed with the stories of antiquity, the myths, and also the science of the planetary movements and kind of how that worked in a physical level. So, being in relationship with the stars and planets again after almost 20 years away really felt like a homecoming to myself. I've studied astrology with several amazing teachers in different modes of astrology, from traditional and Hellenistic to evolutionary and modern, as well as studying astroherbalism, which is the connection between the ancient studies of planets and plants. And I'm deep into that right now. It's super cool. I don't really believe that any one investigation or one tradition is more right or better than any other out of all of these modes of study. It honestly just gives me a lot of hope that there's so many people paying attention to how their bodies and minds are affected by the seasons, which are caused by the revolution of the Earth around the sun, and also by the interwoven dances of the planets, our closest neighbors in space. I think there's a lot of technicality and beautiful technicality within such a long-standing investigation of astrology, but I see it more as an art form than a science. I really consider astrology as an art of living. Kind of a way to tap into the wisdom of ancient people, of our ancestors, and about this rapidly changing planet that we're spiraling through space. And I believe this perspective is needed so much right now at this point in time, because so many of us really feel like we're spiraling out of control. And by tapping into the spirals as a place where we belong and tapping into the cycles as our birthright, as our homeland, I really think it's just an important first step towards finding belonging and meaning in the world. Another beautiful homecoming that I felt when I returned to the high desert here was a reconnection with distinct seasons. Santa Fe is at 7,000 feet elevation, and so although we're in the southern part of the U.S., we experience distinct changes in climate between spring, summer, fall, and winter. And springs are brisk and windy, definitely feeling that right now. Summers are hot with temperatures in the 80s and 90s, and autumns are crisp and filled with the golden leaves of cottonwoods and aspens. Such a beautiful season here. And then winters are freezing and oftentimes snowy and just winter wonderland. So while I lived in humid and warm New Orleans and then in kind of equatorial China and Brazil and then Mediterranean climates of the San Francisco Bay Area, I really did miss the distinct seasons of New Mexico that I grew up with. So when I came home and I began to really deepen into studies of the zodiac, I also began to deepen my relationship with the seasons. And in doing that, I noticed how profound the signs of the zodiac are in their lessons for living in tune with the changing weather of the year. So if I was to consider myself a type of astrologer, I'd like to consider myself an ecological astrologer, because I love to find reminders of, in the midst of the zodiac, of what's happening in the lives, like the life cycle of plants and animals within the wheel of the year. Having studied astroherbalism, that really opened up that for me. And I just think that the ecological wheel of the year through the mythology of the zodiac is a really cool investigation. And I'm excited to give you more information on that as time goes by. So remembering and giving attention to the wisdom of these cycles has really become an obsession for me. And I feel it's an act of reverence for the people who have come before me and the environments that I live within. I kind of think about, my place within my neighborhood and my city, my state, and my country as my personal environments. And then the planet's place, Earth's place within our solar system, within our galaxy, and the larger universe as kind of my transpersonal environments. And I believe that all of these are just relational relationships with place and time that affect us and tie our experiences to other people's experiences within this life. And to me, this is really simple and super profound. One thing that's kind of tickled me lately has been the concept of a revolution. There's been so much talk about the revolution and living in revolutionary times and kind of what revolution means. And through looking at cycles and thinking about astrology and these different systems, the word revolution takes on the physical connotation of one lap around a stationary object or a revolution of the Earth on its axis. And so I really like to think of revolutions as cycles as well, as ongoing moments in time, where we are always tapped into the changes, tapped into the sequences of events. And I recently saw a quote while I was scrolling through Instagram by Joel Leon that says, "Revolution as a practice is not a moment. It is not a fad. It is a continued daily radical practice of the heart, mind, spirit, and body." And I really loved that because when we think about being revolutionary, we think about the times we're living in. It's a pivotal time. We're in a crossing of a threshold. There's a lot going on and a lot coming to the surface in pretty much everywhere around the globe about systems that have not been working within harmony of these cycles and that have taken us so far away from the cycles of nature, away from the health of animals and plants and people and this earth itself. And so I really do believe that it is a revolutionary act to even just kind of change our mindset as far as thinking about how cycles are, how they work, and the fact that revolution is tied into that, and that word is there. It tickles me. I think it's a really cool way to reframe what revolutionary means. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to add that in. Like, cycles are all about the ongoing. Circle is round, it has no end. That's how long I want to be your friend. The camp song that I learned back in the day. But yeah, there is no beginning or end. But there are many places along the wheel that we can choose a new beginning, that we can start fresh, and that we can tap into the potent energies of the moment. So, right now just feels really potent. It feels alive. I see a lot of people coming out of their shells, coming out of their winter hibernation and into a new kind of activation. And so, that really aligns with the coming of spring here, my personal new year. And so in the next episode, I'll be talking about spring. And this week is such a beautiful moment of the equinox, the equal day and equal night, equal light and equal dark, the direction of east and the medicine wheel. I'll be talking about Ostara, which is the celebration of the equinox in the pagan wheel of the year, which relates to Easter in the Christian mythology. It's coming up to the first day of the season of the ram, to Aries season, and both of my parents are Aries, and my mom was born in that week, my dad the week after, and so I grew up with a lot of energy of Aries and of this season in my life. So I really appreciate it, the energy and the get-go and the sense of adventure and the sense of kind of curiosity and optimism with Aries. So I'm just feeling all that right now. And I'm really excited to really dive into it in the next episode. It's a really powerful week of beginnings, and I wish you all a very happy new year. And this week we'll have a lot of all of these different systems. It's going to bring in information from pretty much every system that I talked about. But the next week, not every week will have as much information. So just know some episodes might be a little shorter than others. Some episodes might dive in a little bit deeper to one of the systems and the history behind it, or a reading from a book about that, because I'm by no means an expert. And there are a lot of people who have studied these systems and these cycles over time. So I would love to invite guests onto the podcast who are involved with these cycles in various ways, from elders to teachers, practitioners. And so if you're someone out there listening who would like to be part of this project as it evolves and has a knowledge or a curiosity about one of these systems, I'd love to have you. I'd love to chat. In addition to this podcast, I will be starting to offer personal readings using this Cycles of Time multidisciplinary framework. And in these readings, you'll be able to access them on the Cycles of Time podcast website as well. And basically, we'll be able to meet one-on-one to dive into the symbolism and stories and the synthesis for your personal birth chart. I've done astrology readings with people, and I'm excited to kind of bring in other systems and look at the placement of the sun, the moon, the constellation that was rising over the horizon when you were born, and some of the planets as well. We can tailor it based on your interests, but look at what part of the wheel of the year these were in when you were born, and kind of that gives an insight. I've done it for a few people so far, and really gives a nice insight from a global perspective as far as the energies that contribute to the beautiful complexity that is you. So, for example, I'll just give you a little example of what that would look like. My Cycles of Time chart, focusing on the sun. Again, we could do any number of different placements and planets, but focusing on the sun, I was born in early September when the sun was in the part of the sky known as Virgo. Being an early fall baby, in the medicine wheel, it corresponds with the west, with the color black, with the earth, and with the evening, and the adult phase of life. In the Taoist 5-element philosophy, I was born in the transition time between fire and metal in the element of earth as well. So I have a lot of earth in my chart from different perspectives. And in the corresponding yearly cycle of the I Ching, which is used in human design and the gene keys again, I was born when the sun was in the hexagram, or the chapter, the gate, number 64. And this is the final chapter in the Book of Changes, and the hexagram is called Before Completion. It's known as the gate of confusion, but also the gate of imagination. And gate 64 symbolizes the power of the human mind to make sense of chaos through the potential of our imagination. And I really resonate with that as a dreamer and an artist. And there's these hexagrams and these chapters are translated in the human design system from the wheel of the year into a part of the body. So each gate, each hexagram has an association with one of the energy centers in the body. And gate 64 is in the head or the crown chakra. So I really like when I discovered all this information from the different perspectives, I just saw that I had a lot of earth energy, a lot of kind of like groundedness and stability, but also this head activation that reaches up into the stars and reaches up into just a deep curiosity for the world. And so that's what I see as one of my purposes here on this planet, is to connect the earth, connect the seasons, connect the tangible reality with potential, with imagination, and with the stars above. So that's a little bit about me. That's just the sun, the placement of the sun on my birth chart through a multicultural, multi-historical perspective of cycles of time. And what I love about looking at the cycles in this holistic way, transiting through them, each week throughout the year and looking at every single piece of the wheel. What I'm excited about with that is just to convey the information that, we are in a holistic system. We're not made of parts. There's plenty of parts that contribute to the holistic system, but we are whole, and we are all made up of the entire circle. So we each contain energies and pieces of all the 12 signs, all the 64 gates of the I Ching, all the 5 elements, all the 4 directions. And if we have a luminary, a moon or sun, or a planet in any of these areas when we're born, if there's a concentrated body of mass in that part of the sky, and that season of the year when we're born, we may have more of a focus on those particular energies in this lifetime. But the whole circle is there, and we're all part of all of it. And, for example, I have my moon in the sign of Libra, my sun in Virgo, and my rising Venus and Mars are all in the sign of Leo. So these particular mythologies and archetypes feel really relevant to my life, but all signs of the zodiac are part of my experience, just as all parts of these other systems are part of our experience as humans. So I hope that by tracking these cycles throughout the course of a full year will help you all and help me as well along the way build a deeper understanding and a deeper relationship with each of these breakdowns of time. And then from there, you can decide where you want to dive deeper. If you want to get more into astrology or more into human design or the I Ching, more into the Chinese system of the 5 elements. And there's just infinite amount of beautiful wisdom from each of these. So this is kind of a synthesis, an overview, interconnection, and it's what I love, what I like to do. So, I'm going to wrap up here, but I'm really excited. This is my first podcast, and I look forward to seeing what emerges through talking out into space. I did have a college radio show in New Orleans about 20 years ago, and I really loved sending vibrations out into the airwaves and connecting with listeners at 2 a.m. in New Orleans. It was all some interesting callers. So I really look forward to the callers here, the connections that I'll make with people, and the conversations that can come up. So thank you so much for being here and for your curiosity and your interest. And I'll see you next time as we dive into week 1 of the Wheel of the Year, spring. See you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye.